lot about towards the end of the chapter the importance of integrity. Where does that lie in kind of that overarching story of seeking the truth and looking at the good of in humanity?
Yeah, I think in terms of integrity, the idea and truth, the idea that there's a universal truth is it play is goes hand in hand with that. I think if you believe in sort of a local, just my truth, then integrity sort of has no meaning because I can be consistent with what I believe, but nobody else really understands what that pattern is and why I'm doing the things I'm doing. So I think that, and this is what I talk about in the chapter, I think there's a good case to be made, and a couple people have made similar cases, one being Jonathan Haidt and one being that I just read, um, Tom Holland in his book Dominion, uh, that the idea of God was sort of the driving force behind the development of integrity cross-culturally. So um, Jonathan Haidt talks about some studies that have shown and proposed that there are underlying necessities that have to be in place in order for integrity to develop, in order for honest truth seeking to develop. And he shows that those things are met by the idea of an omnipotent God who cares about your behavior. And then I would say I take it a step further in showing how drastic that would be for someone at the time of, say, Abraham, rather than later in the Bible, once Israel as a nation is established. Because once Israel's established and you have the full law and the society of Israel commingling, then they have a lot less incentive to interact positively beyond their own borders, because then they think, well, we're doing the right things that God told us to do, and we're the special people, and so we can just dismiss those heathens. Not that that's what the Bible says to do, but you can see that's how Israel sort of took it. But when you are a stranger in a strange land, when you are alone trying to start your own way, like Abraham was, and all you have is your faith in God and your knowledge that He is supreme and that He cares about your behavior and He expects certain things of you, then you're going to have much more of the attitude of positive relations, regardless of the makeup of the local people. So I think that this and Tom Holland sort of takes the other side, but I think it reveals the same mechanism because he makes the case that religions developed syncretism, which is to say, like, people in Greece decided that the Egyptian god, whatever, uh, I can't think of the name right now, but one of the Egyptian gods was the same as their god Apollo, and so that they sort of syncretized their religions and said we're talking about the same thing, and that was extended that understanding across their borders. Whereas before they would just be insular, and they would believe in abiding by respect of other people worshiping their god, but not really caring about people beyond their borders. So he proposes syncretism as a way to bridge that gap, but I think it's also done, and I think more effectively, by the idea that there is a universal God who oversees all actions and cares about all people. So, so in any case, I think his acknowledgement that that would serve that purpose proves that that kind of thing serves that purpose. So, it would necessarily be true then of the universal God as well. So this idea of integrity, I think, comes out of that view of a universal God or a universal truth, that there is a universal aspect of there's a unitary aspect to infinite reality, and it has a personality, a will, and a consciousness that interests it in how we interact with causation, as we're called to, and how we interact with other people who are also called to partake of universal causality. So, this idea is sort of, at least if you take an evolutionary lens, you could very easily construct the argument that this was sort of the seed of integrity, and the way to build effective communities. And then now we look at it today, like, okay, that's all ancient history, but we're in a time where people are losing trust in each other. And so the requirements that Jonathan Haidt talks about in order for a social system to adopt accountability, and engage with exploratory efforts for the truth, you need to have, he's quoting Phil Tetlock, but he says you need to have the explicit expectation that one will be called upon to justify one's beliefs, feelings, or actions to others, coupled with the expectation that people will reward or punish us based on how well we justify ourselves. And he continues, accountability, that's what he was just describing. Like, that's accountability. You're accountable for your actions. You're accountable for your judgments, for your feelings, and how you acted on them. And how well you say, this is what I was thinking at the time, and this is why I did what I did. Now, you need that in society, but accountability only increases exploratory thought when an additional three conditions apply. Number one is that decision makers, people who are making decisions, learn before forming any opinion that they will be accountable to an audience. So they know that they're going to be judged. The audience's views are unknown, because if they know the views, then they'll just formulate their position to appeal to that audience. And then they believe the audience to be well informed and interested in accuracy. So they believe the audience to be introduced in truth. When all of those apply, people do their darndest to figure out the truth, because that's what the audience wants to hear, or at least that's the best bet, is to try and figure out the truth, try and state it clearly. So the reason why I went through all that is that just as we saw that it worked, it at least could have worked in principle in the time of Abraham, it can definitely work now. Now we've sort of lost a lot of the ideas. We've lost a lot of that religious social structure that would give sort of like Israel had the idea that we're just this insular community and we look down on other people. But we have a lot of people who are just sort of adrift, and societies are breaking down. But if we restore the idea of a universal God, then we come to the point where we are fulfilling those requirements. People start to believe that God is desiring something of them. They're going to need to account for it. He knows, and that we can't manipulate him. We can't pretend that we were doing what he wants us to do. Like, he knows better than us. So I think this, regardless of the historicity of whether that's exactly how it happened, whether it happened on the evolutionary model or not, the reality is that today, in order to restore social trust and social integration, we need integrity. We need to act in ways that are consistent, that are predictable to other people, that are that take into account other people, that are ethical. And if we feel that we're genuinely going to be held account to that by an all-knowing God, then that's going to be a great thing to influence that growth of integrity and to bring that about. So I think that, and it's sort of an infinite backstop, really. Like, you can't undermine it. So as long as there's that belief in God, you are going to be called to act with integrity.